Okay, good morning, folks. It is November the 8th, and we're going to continue our fireside chats on Annus Horribilis. 2020 has been a nasty year, and I have some observations I'd like to make. First of all, the first one is that the media doesn't get to declare a president. Secondly, that there is a historical background on presidencies that have been contested. Thirdly, that background is essentially a legal one, where compromises are made to ensure that there wasn't corruption in the voting process. I think one of my greatest concerns is that there's an appalling lack of intelligence in 10-second sound bites and simplistic memes, and I see them all over the place on social media. Putting your politician of choice into office isn't going to cure the existential crisis the Western world faces. The Western world has lost the plot, and it forgets what made it free to begin with. Namely, the fundamental certainty that government is the only possible source of tyranny and oppression. Only proper constitutional restraints and the rule of law can prevent that tyranny. You lose the latter, and you'll be certain to have the former. So, the other day, I posted about one of the major kerfuffles in determining the outcome of a presidential election. It happened during the Reconstruction era in 1877. Which was a period in American history which lasted from 1863 to 1877. It was a significant chapter in the history of American civil rights. And anyone who claims to be interested in such things ought to be very familiar with it. This term has two applications. The first applies to the complete history of the entire country from 1865 to 1877, following the American Civil War. The second, the Compromise of 1877, which was known as the Great Betrayal, was an informal, unwritten deal that settled the intensely disputed 1876 U.S. presidential election. It resulted in the United States federal government pulling the last troops out of the South and formally ending Reconstruction. The last time that there was a major need for the Supreme Court to become involved in an election was Bush versus Gore in 2000. And it required a decision by the United States Supreme Court, which came down on December the 12th, that settled a recount dispute in Florida in the Florida 2000 presidential election between George W. Bush and Al Gore. Earlier on December the 8th, the Florida Supreme Court, by a vote of 4-3, ordered a statewide recount of all undervotes, over 61,000 ballots that the vote tabulation machines had missed. 61,000 ballots they'd missed. The Bush campaign immediately asked the U.S. Supreme Court to stay the decision and halt the recount. Justice Antonin Scalia, convinced that all the manual recounts being performed in Florida counts were illegitimate, urged his colleagues to grant the stay immediately. On December the 9th, the fine conservative justices on the Supreme Court granted the stay for Bush, while Scalia, citing irreparable harm that would befall Bush as the recount would cast a needless and unjustified cloud over Bush's legitimacy. In dissent, Justice John Paul Stevens wrote that counting every legally cast vote cannot constitute irreparable harm. Oral arguments were scheduled for December the 11th. In a pure per curiam decision, that means that all the judges vote the same, unanimously. The court first ruled 7-2, Justices Stevens and Ginsburg dissenting, strictly on equal protection grounds, that the recount be stopped. Specifically, the use of different standards of counting in different counties violated the Equal Protections Clause of the U.S. Constitution. The case has also been argued on the basis of Article 2 jurisdictional grounds, which found favor with only Justices Scalia, Clarence Thomas, and William Rehnquist. Second, the court ruled 5-4 against the remedy proposed by Justices Stephen Breyer and David Souter of sending the case back to Florida to complete the recount using a uniform statewide standard before the scheduled December the 18th meeting of Florida's electors in Tallahassee. The majority held no alternative method could be established within the discretionary December 12th safe harbor deadline set by Title III of the United States Code, which the Florida Supreme Court had stated that the Florida legislature intended to meet. The deadline arrived 2 hours after the release of the court's decision. The court, stating that not meeting the safe harbor deadline would therefore violate the Florida Election Code, rejected an extension of the deadline. The Supreme Court decision allowed the previous vote certification made by Florida Secretary of State Katherine Harris to stand for George W. Bush, who thereby won Florida's 25 electoral votes. Florida's votes gave Bush, the Republican candidate, 271 electoral votes, more than the 270 required to win the Electoral College. This meant the defeat of Democratic candidate Al Gore, who had won 267, but actually received only 266, as a faithless elector from the District of Columbia abstained from voting. Media organizations later analyzed the ballots and found that, under any considered criteria, the originally pursued limited county-based recounts would have confirmed a Bush victory, whereas a statewide recount would have revealed a Gore victory. Florida later changed to new voting machines to avoid punch cards, which had produced dimpled or hanging chads. So you can see, first of all, that America, because of states' rights, it has no consistent process for voting. This is something that many Canadians here in Canada have not familiarized themselves with. And it's the appalling lack of understanding of history and legality that's led to the media declaring a win for Biden. Now, he may well have won, but not until the courts have come to the decision and all votes are properly counted and all voter fraud thoroughly investigated. And that ain't happened yet. So hold on to your hats, kids. It's going to be a bumpy ride. But that's America for you. It likes hype, hyperbole, bombast, and head-slapping Pentecostal preachers. All of which, as a Canadian, I find absolutely disgusting. We don't like bombast and hyperbole. We prefer calm, circumspect, measured, good governance, temperance, measured, controlled. Take a breath, Bill. Yeah. The one thing absolutely for sure is the government must answer to the people responsibly. When the rule of law is broken, tyranny will be the only possible outcome. You have a great Sunday, folks. Let's wait and see what's going to happen down the road. Cheers.